Good morning. Let me say that again. Good morning. My name is Leanne Cheney, Active Transportation Coordinator for SPC, and I'd like to welcome you to today's Active Transportation Forum. The meeting is being recorded, and I'm going to next move to an updated agenda, if I could find it. All right, here we go. So we have an updated agenda here, and many of you know we typically end the meetings with the roundtable updates, but I'm going to change that up a bit today. And we'll start off with introductions and roundtable updates combined. So whenever we get to that, I'll ask you to, I'll call on you, I'll get down my participant list, which changes, but as we go through it, and ask for, give your name, the organization that you're representing, and if you'd like to share any updates on programs or activities, that would be great. So we'll do that. And before we get started with that, I would like to take a minute and introduce our new director of SPC's Department of Strategic Initiatives and Policy, DJ Ryan. So DJ, if you'd like to say a few words, that would be great.
Yeah, hey, thanks so much. Good morning, everybody. I'm DJ Ryan. I'm the new Director of Strategic Initiatives and Policy for the SPC. This is my second day on the job, so mostly I'm here just to listen and learn today. But appreciate you giving me a second, and I'll go ahead and drop my my email in the chat just in case anybody needs to have offline conversations. But very excited to get to know and work with all of you.
Thanks so much for that, DJ. We look forward to working with you. And so now I'm going to get down the participant list and just call on you. Like I said, if you could just share your name, organization, and if you'd like to give any updates for your roundtable update, or you can just say you have nothing to share right now. So we'll go ahead and get started with Ann. Ann Gorick, I don't actually see her microphone capabilities, so we'll move on to Bill.
Morning, I'm here.
Okay, great. Do you want to share where you're from and any updates you may have, if you have any?
This is Joel. I'm from Butler County. Nothing to report.
Okay, thanks, Joel. All right, how about Carrie Machuga?
Good morning. This is Carrie Machuga with McCormick Taylor.
All right, great. Brian Watkins?
Yeah, this is Brian Watkins from Markowski Engineering.
All right, I'm going to skip presenters. We'll get to that. Courtney.
Hi, this is Courtney from Friends of the Riverfront. I don't have anything right now, except for Breckenridge is going to construction soon, so we're really excited.
All right, awesome. Craig.
Good morning, Craig Tuchek from PRT here.
David DeGoya.
Hi, yes, Dave DeGioia from McMahon Bowman Company.
All right. So I'm not hearing a lot on the roundtable updates. Emily, do we have Emily Saganik? All right, let's move on to Eric Bohr.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Eric Bohr with Bike Pittsburgh. I'll leave an update. Just to try to set the tone. We have solidified our 3 dates for open streets the last weekend in May, June, and July, and we're going to have 2 new routes. So hopefully we can get people excited for that. The first route that will cross 2 rivers, just to give a little hint of what it's going to be. Thanks.
You're welcome. Also, Eric, I did hear about the National 311 Day or 311 Day, and I put in the chat. What's that?
Yeah, we're working with an advocate who has the idea to start a National 311 Day on March 11th, which is this Saturday, where people are encouraged to join or create an event to go out and submit 311s to help make your your community a little bit safer. So yeah, thanks for that reminder. I should have said that.
Oh, that's fine. And I did put a link to mention of that on your website in the chat box.
Thanks.
we have that there.
Appreciate that.
Sure, thank you. And then going back to the roundtable updates, Jason Theakston.
Good morning, everybody. This is Jason Theakston with Washington County Planning Commission. Not much to report. We are actually looking into applying for the Safe Streets for All grant through the bipartisan infrastructure law to do a pedestrian study in the city of Washington. We're going to look at the area around downtown Main Street, as well as over by Washington Jefferson College. They have some plans to create some connections to our Main Street, and also up one of our main busy thoroughfares, Jefferson Avenue. There's a high school there, a couple other points of interest that people walk to. So we want to try to just get, an action plan looked at that and put together. So that's pretty much all we got.
All right, that sounds great. All right, Joe.
This is Joe Rasevich from Trans Systems. Nothing to report update today. I'm sure my team members will have something to talk about today.
Okay, great. John Burkle.
Good morning. John Burkle, Patrick NPR. We're working with our clients on a number of fronts to advance some projects and help them secure funding. So we're not ready to announce those yet. However, we are in the process of updating the Mount Lebanon Comprehensive Plan. And one of the focus areas there is to identify ways to improve pedestrian connectivity and connection to transit in Mount Lebanon. So that's all I have right now. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Katie Kowalczyk.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm with Friends of the Riverfront, working with Courtney. No
Okay,
updates
great.
at the moment. Thanks.
Okay, we'll hear from you later in the presentation, Rose to Charles. All right, Laurie LaFontaine.
Nothing to report. We're just trying to get a lot of things done in Indiana County, finishing up our active transportation plan, which Josh Krug has been working on. So always trying to get something going like the rest of everyone.
Right. Okay, great. Mavis Rainey.
Good morning, everyone. Mavis Rainey with the Oakland TMA. Just a few things. We are still in conversations with PennDOT about an integrated mobility study for Oakland. This came out of the 2.5-year neighborhood comprehensive plan, the Oakland plan that was passed in 2022. Hoping to have some updates on the pursuit of PennDOT Connects funding for the study. We're also working with the state on the community engagement for the Bates Street widening project that's being looked at right now, with the anticipation of 2025, I believe, for the actual work, if the study deems that that's something that's possible. Then the other thing is working with the mayor's office on the upcoming series of community meetings on the replacement of the Fraser Street steps in Oakland.
Street corridor. I reached out to Jen, Grace, to find out when they need our info.
Okay, great. Mitchell Henderson.
Hi, my name is Mitchell Henderson. I'm from the Senator Fetterman's office. I did want to actually give a little update. I'm new to the position, but our appropriations portal is open on fetterman.senate.gov. So if you're looking for any federal appropriations, you can go there and look through and make an application.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that, Mitchell. Noah Forbeck.
Hello, I'm from PennDOT District 11, Safety Section.
All right. Sean Stark.
Yes, good morning, everyone. This is Sean Stark with Trans Systems. I have nothing to report for myself, but you'll hear it from my colleague today.
All right, great. And Sydney Kai. All right, not hearing from that. That pretty much is it for participants on my list. If I missed you and you'd like to share an update, we can certainly catch that at the end. We'll go ahead and get started. And then looking at the agenda there, our first presenter will be Trish Meek, who is the PennDOT statewide bicycle and pedestrian coordinator. So I'll turn it over to you, Trish.
Thanks, Leanne. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. Leanne had asked me if I could just provide a brief update, just provide you some background about what I did before I came to PennDOT to work as a statewide bicycle pedestrian coordinator. And then I have a few updates that I'd like to provide you about things that are going on from a statewide perspective. So I've been on the job since June of last year, and many of you may have known my predecessor, Roy Gothy. He moved to the policy office in PennDOT, so he's still within reach when I have all those tough questions about protocol and things that have happened in the past. And I would encourage you, if you have questions, please reach out to me. We can provide contact information related to my email address, because as I tell people, every time someone asks me a question, I get to learn something new. So I'm available to help you with issues or answer questions. So please don't hesitate to reach out. So some of the things, and Leanne did point out one of the items on the agenda, PennDOT has opened their 2023 public comment period on the STC 12-year program. It opened on March 1st, and it runs through April 30th. So you can go to the website. We may be able to provide that link in the chat as well, so that if you want to provide comments, you're able to do that. There is a survey there in order for you to facilitate the process. There's actually additional information about phone number if you prefer to request a paper form to provide that information. And there is going to be an open public forum on April 12th. Details are not yet put out there, but I can provide that to Leanne, and I'm sure she has an extremely extensive email list that she can distribute that information as well. So if you're interested in providing comments as part of that, this is something that's an ongoing program. You may have provided comments in the past. PennDOT would like to hear what you think. Something else that's going on, one of my primary job responsibilities is to work with the Pennsylvania Pedicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, known as PPAC. So if you haven't received the agendas in the past, you're not familiar with the program, you can send me a quick email and I can add you to our interested parties list. You'll receive meeting invites as well as the agenda and associated attachments. The intent of PPAC is to provide advice on bicycle and pedestrian issues. So there are designated members to the committee, of which Scott Bricker represents the Metro Pittsburgh area, so he is a voting member. We do have a meeting coming up next Tuesday. They're held from 1 to 3 in Harrisburg, but we also have a virtual format. So you can attend via the Teams platform if you're interested in listening in and participating in the meeting. So let me know if you want to receive that information, and we'll make sure you're on the distribution list. One of the major activities that we're doing right now with PPAC is we're working with a consulting team to help us do an assessment and a direction setting activity so that we can determine how PPAC can function in the future to operate as highly as possible to provide advisement to state organizations. If you've sat in the meetings before, there's been routinely some presentations. We have legislative updates. The membership is somewhat diverse, and we will be talking a little bit about the PPAC membership appointments. The current appointments of the 17 members, a number of them are appointed by the governor. They are going to expire in 2023. So we're working through a process now to potentially identify some individuals for recommendation to the governor to fill some slots that will be opening up. So if you attend the meeting on next week, or if you want additional information, I can send that to you as well. Now, I also wanted to provide just a short update on the U.S. Bike Route Program. So some of you may be aware that Pennsylvania currently has 3 U.S. bike routes. The intent is to identify national long-distance routes. The criteria are it must connect through the state in its entirety, connect into other existing routes. And Pennsylvania has been in the process of preparing an application for consideration by AASHTO at their spring meeting for US Bike Route 11. It will connect New York to Maryland through the center of the state, and the idea was to use existing approved bicycle PA routes, and Franklin County actually did an additional study to make that final connection into Maryland. So we're packaging that information now. The draft will soon be reviewed and it will be submitted to AASHTO for consideration. So that would be, if approved, the 4th US bike route in the state of Pennsylvania. And a couple other just brief updates about things that are going on. And I'd be happy to come back in the future and present more additional information with a detailed PowerPoint with some of this information as well. You may know that PennDOT is in the process of updating their design manual too. So it provides detailed guidance about the techniques that are available to use in Pennsylvania for particular applications. Chapter 14 was updated recently, and that is related to bicycle facilities. But I also wanted to make you aware that 2 chapters that will be forthcoming are a traffic calming chapter that's been drafted at this point, and we're just starting work on a pedestrian chapter as well. So I just wanted to make you aware that those are upcoming. I'm not sure of the exact time frame for the review process and when they'll be released, but there will be companion chapters in DM2 that are similar to the existing Chapter 14 bicycle facilities that's out there right now. We also are in the process of finalizing something called a mid-block crosswalk and trail crossing policy. So the idea is to standardize that process that will be used when trails cross public roadways. I know that I'm relatively new to the position, but in my former position with the Center County MPO, this was something that we had worked with previously, and we're hoping that it sets the standard for exactly what you as an applicant would need to do, what materials would be required when you approach PennDOT for those crossings of state roadways, and what the parameters are for what types of traffic control devices would be needed when you do put a crossing in place. That is in the final stages right now of being revised by our consultant team, and PPAC actually, we provided them the opportunity to provide comments on that on its draft form. So we do have a meeting scheduled, I believe it's next week, to look at some of the final comments, and hopefully we'll have additional information on that in the future. So also, I just wanted to say that just from a little bit of a perspective of background, I have been a transportation planner for the last 30 years. So I've worked with 3 MPOs, the Blair County MPO, based out of Hollidaysburg, PA, which we would consider to be a small MPO. I then worked for the Harrisburg Area Transportation Study out of Harrisburg, which dealt with the Perry, Cumberland, and Dauphin County area, which we would consider a medium MPO. And then the last organization I worked for was the Center County MPO, which was based out of State College. So my primary job responsibility when I was in Center County was the bicycle and pedestrian program. So just excited that the opportunity opened up at PennDOT so that I could move to the state and try to initiate positive change there, work with communities. And we're also hopeful. I know that we've looked at PennDOT from an infrastructure perspective. We've had a lot of conversations since I started in the position that we want to do more from a safety education and encouragement perspective. So we're going to start working on some of those types of materials that will hopefully be beneficial to your organizations for events or distribution. We're just very early in that process, and I'm sure you're aware that we now have a new acting Secretary of Transportation, Mike Carroll at PennDOT. He needs to go through a formal confirmation process with the PA House and Senate, so be watching for that to occur. And just last week, we found out that a new Deputy Secretary for Multimodal has been appointed. So her name is Meredith Bagica, and she formerly worked as the executive director for the House Transportation Committee. So her name may sound familiar from her former role there. She's starting actually tomorrow, so I'll have the opportunity to meet her next week. So just so you're aware, you may have known Jenny LaWurst, who served in that position for a number of years. Then we had Andy Batson as our acting deputy secretary for multimodal, and Meredith will be moving into that role shortly. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And again, if you have requests for additional information, you can contact me directly, and I'd be happy to come back to future meetings to present and attend as well.
All right, thanks so much for that introduction and those updates. When Trish and I talked earlier about her presenting today, she said, I don't have that much to share. I'm pretty new on the job. Well, I feel like we just got a lot of good information. I also put your email address in the chat box, Trish, so if anyone wants to reach out for the PPAC or any other questions. But if anyone has questions now, feel free to unmute and ask Trish. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next agenda topic.
Hi, this is Jason Theakston from Washington County. Is there any idea of when the mid-block crosswalk guidance would be released? Is there any kind of timeline on that? We're having some issues here that we need to look at, and we need some guidance on that with regards to the new policy. Thank you.
Yeah, Jason, thanks for the question. We just set up a meeting for next week. So next Wednesday, we're going to be talking about the final comments on the policy, and then I'll have a better idea if we're ready to release the policy or if it's going to go back through what's called a second clearance transmittal. And once we hold the meeting and I have an update, I can even reach out to you directly and let you know when that is anticipated. Sorry, I don't have an exact date.
Oh, no, that's fine. I know that they've been working on it for a while, and I just was wondering if you had any idea. But no, that's great. I'd appreciate any update. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Well, hearing no other questions, thanks again, Trish, and we definitely will be inviting you back to future forums. So
sounds great.
All right. All right. Now we'll move on to our next presentation, which is a review of the Indiana County Active Transportation Plan being presented by Josh Kurt.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention today. Thank you, SPC, for hosting the meeting. I'm going to have my camera on just here briefly. I'm going to turn it off so as not to be a distraction. I'm going to be sharing my screen, I think, for the majority of the presentation here. Okay. And everybody can hear me, I suppose.
Yeah, sound good, Josh.
Thank you. Okay, let me get into the presentation here. Sorry. Oh, whoops. What's going on here? Okay. So again, thank you. So this plan is actually an update. Well, we called it an update, but it really did kind of, I won't say balloon, but grow and evolve into really a dynamic update to our current plan, which is more people biking and walking more often. That was adopted in conjunction with our county comprehensive plan in 2012, but most of the work on that was done in 2009 through 2011. So definitely we're due for an update, and we're going to present on that today. The obligatory background information on Indiana County here, with a little bit of a highlight related to how folks do get to work. It was actually noteworthy to me, and not in a good way, that the last time that I presented about active transportation in Indiana County to this forum was several years ago, pre-COVID for sure. It was down in person, and we talked about sustainability through programming and people, etc. And at that time, there was 1% of folks that did bicycle, and now it's 0. Now there's a plus or minus there, of course, but walking, I think may have gone up. I can't recall on that. But one of the other noteworthy things was there was not any percentage listed last time with 2017 ACS data for work from home. But now it does in the 2021, there's a 6% work from home, which is significant and something to consider. And I just provided that other background information for you. Our population has been going down slightly countywide over the past several decades, actually. But there are areas in the county that did see growth, which includes Indiana Borough, actually, in this past census. I'm going to take a pause from the PowerPoint now, and we'll get back to the PowerPoint to finish the presentation. And I'm going to jump into the summary and overview of the active transportation plan update. We stopped using the acronym because you can write it down yourself and say it in your head. It doesn't work that well. So I made a link to it here. So this actually takes you to our planning office website. So this is a website that we manage here in-house. And we were able to have a landing page for the plan. And let me go to two-page view here. So the title, walk, bike, ride, roll. You know, we thought it was catchy enough, but we needed the technical title here as well. It's not adopted yet, but we are working through. Oh, can everybody see my screen still? Or do I need to update it? It looks like maybe I need to update it. Sorry. Here. How about now? Are we good?
Yep, looking good.
Okay, I apologize. So yeah, this is a cover page of the plan. These are all pictures from here in Indiana County. And again, like I mentioned, it's not adopted, but we're working through the adoption process. We're actually going to formally adopt it as an amendment to the comprehensive plan. So we have to host a public meeting only as the planning agency. And then it has to be available for 45 days for school districts and municipalities to make comments on it. We have had it out for extensive public comment, et cetera. So we are at the final stage. And funding was provided through the PA Department of Health through the WalkWorks program and the PA Downtown Center. So I do want to make sure I don't miss those acknowledgements. Thank you to Sam Pearson with the PA Downtown Center. And a thank you specifically to you folks at Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission for the assistance with the interactive comment map and community survey. And thank you to our project steering committee, who really were very dedicated throughout the process. And then, of course, all the elected officials, healthcare professionals, service providers, all the other partners and key persons that were interviewed in developing the plan. Really was a team effort here. You can see some of the staff that were involved. Project steering committee members, Leanne Cheney being one of them. Thank you, Leanne. And Laurie LaFontaine, who's also the chair of our County Planning Commission, who's in attendance today. And there were 16 key stakeholders interviewed, and I'll let you all kind of review some of those yourself. And you can review this plan as follow-up. We'll send a link. I want to thank our consultants. We did have a grant, $16,500 we got. There was no match, but we did augment their effort as staff. And it was actually really neat that Indiana Borough received $20,000 to do an update to or they didn't have one, to do a from scratch active transportation plan for Indiana Borough. And White Township, which surrounds Indiana Borough, got a $2,500 grant to do a complete streets policy. So both of those have been completed as well. And we had actually submitted our applications together, you know, supporting each other, speaking towards our collaboration, et cetera. And we were actually 3 out of the 10 grants throughout the state were able to get here in Indiana County. So I recommend others explore the grant program. It was useful, relatively slim budget, but again, we were able to augment that by staff and by having a dedicated steering committee to get us from point A to B here. I'm just going to breeze through, some of this, okay? But I figured I would just utilize the plan itself as part of the presentation and highlight certain sections, and then you at least all will be able to see, what the content is here. So I'm going to skip down to the process. And this is something I really did want to highlight. It's one of the reasons why I was most excited to present this update to this group, because of course, the very specifics of the local issues and stuff may not be quite as relevant to each of you individually, but the innovative process that we utilized, I think may be. And I think there's some good takeaways here that were very useful and we found success in implementing. I call it that we did basically a typical planning process plus. So it was a 4-step planning process where we did all of the public participation to identify current active transportation priorities. And I'll highlight that in another slide. Then we combined that with an extremely thorough plans review where we had several existing planning documents, open space recreation plan, a greenways and trails plan, transportation chapter of the comprehensive plan, and the plan that we were updating, which was a bicycle and pedestrian plan for Indiana County that was adopted prior to the term active transportation being very well adopted and commonly used in planning practice. Then we developed our themes and recommendations, and of course we had the input, but the key ingredient was this existing plans review and the way that we combined that with the current active transportation priorities to kind of synthesize a list of recommendations and actions. So as you can see here, kind of in the graphic. And before I jump too far, I do want to thank particularly Molly Sarver, who is the chief planner here in our office in the planning section. So I serve primarily as the liaison project manager for this, but she was a key member to the team, and she did all the editing beyond the work that was initially done by the consultant team. So a combination of everybody's efforts got us here, but I do have to thank her in particular and give her a shout out for the work with the graphics and pulling the plan together. We, as I mentioned before, we did the new input through a community survey. Thanks to SBC for partnering and helping with that, and an interactive comment mapping tool. Then we had 4 regional public meetings dispersed throughout the county, generally in places where we felt that there was that active transportation was a topic of interest, or that there were trails nearby and that type of thing, but we also tried to spread them out regionally. And we did 16 key person interviews as part of the new input as well. But again, then combining that with the existing plans review, and we actually ultimately grouped these into 4 different themes. This is another key takeaway. So, and I thought it was encouraging, and I thought almost a good segue, since it was towards the last presentation or discussion from Trish there, that she mentioned about safety and education and encouragement. So one of our themes is education and awareness, which speaks as to the safety, etc. And the other that I think is really important, especially in 2023 here, is programming and promotion. We've been doing that a lot here in Indiana County over the last 10 years. And it's one of the places where we found success. And we're working, it's one of the components that helps to contribute to a culture shift of moving more towards biking and walking being more culturally acceptable and making it more of an approachable issue here in Indiana County. So again, here's some of the overview information. We did provide some of this in the plan, which actually is from SPC's website. I know we're going to be working to update these at some point, but this was very useful for us to be able to provide this in the plan. So thank you for that. We did mention about the community health needs assessment. Of course, you know, ultimately our work towards whole health and combining that with active transportation and participating in the WalkWorks program was related to the community health needs assessment and some of the metrics that are in there related to obesity and chronic diseases related to such. If for folks who aren't very well aware of our main trails here in Indiana County and the regional trails that we connect to, the Hoodlebug Trail connects down to the Ghost Town Trail. And there's a more regional map here that actually shows our partners over in Cambria County and the Cambria and Indiana Trail Council, who manages everything east of the county line, and Indiana County Parks and Trails, who maintains the Ghost Town Trail throughout Indiana County. But currently, and you could not say this 10 years ago, that's for certain. You actually couldn't say it 5 years ago. You can intentionally and safely ride on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, not necessarily all dedicated trail, or you know, so it's a combination of share the road and other appropriate applications and improvements. But you can ride from Indiana Borough down to Burrell Township and get on the Ghost Town Trail and ride to Evansburg Borough. And I believe it was completed. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but if not, it's going to be open very soon. This is going to be one of the first looping trails around. I don't know if it's nationally, definitely in Pennsylvania though, which is another really neat feature here as part of the Ghost Town Trail. There's been pretty extensive studies done on economic impact from the Ghost Town Trail as well, and we may want to do more studies related to that and the Hoodlebug Trail. But this is definitely a highlight for us that we want to continue to focus on making improvements to, etc. Let me get my presentation back right. So the third section of community engagement here, as I mentioned, we had extensive meetings of the steering committee. We have a good relationship here locally. We're fortunate to have a local radio at Renda Broadcasting, and working with the newspaper locally as well with the Indiana Gazette. We're able to get out, get folks out to our community engagement events. You can see an example there of the flyer and some pictures from some of the events. This is a picture from down in Blairsville, actually. We had, I think, over 50 people attend that. And we had over 75 people attend our meeting in Indiana Borough. So we partnered with Indiana Borough and White Township on a meeting in Indiana. That went very well for that open house at Grace United Church. And again, we did the community mapping, etc. The key stakeholder interviews we were able to summarize, which really provided context for the plan and helped us to gauge, you know, overall, is this the direction that we ought to be going with this? And we were able to kind of juxtapose it against both the existing action items and recommendations from previously adopted plans and the new input from the public engagement through the online survey and the interactive tools. So we were able to kind of combine all of these things to ensure that we had a comprehensive approach. So it was a multifaceted approach when it came to the community engagement. Just of note here, we did in October of this past year, we sent the initial draft to Planning Commission for comments. We've incorporated their comments, and this final draft The final draft of the plan has been completed since it was February 8th, and we're working through the adoption process now, as I mentioned. Now, this is another thing that I thought was interesting that I wanted to share, was about the way we broke down our priorities from what can we do versus what you can do. Just a kind of neat and light way of conveying, the difference there, and the county taking responsibility or claiming responsibility for certain action items, whereas other items are things that the county can support or be a partner in, and some things may need to be led at the municipal level or by other stakeholders in this. So as I mentioned before, we had the 4 different categories, and we broke them into this. And what we did also, we put the recommendations here first, just so that folks who were more interested in recommendation level of information could digest it here on this page. That was one of the changes we made from the first draft, where we had them all just as you see them in the second section with the recommendation and the action items. But of course, we included each of the action items for community enhancements, for programming and promotion, for education and awareness, and for connectivity. One other thing that we did was we separated an implementation matrix that we included in the appendix. Again, just for the simplicity, trying to make this a digestible document, but while still maintaining at some place, the details of, what is it going to take in order to implement something? What is the funding strategy, that type of thing, and we'll hit on that. Another I think best practice that we incorporated was identifying gateway and hub communities with respect to active transportation in the county, and these are areas that already have existing activity or may be potential areas for where there's opportunity for us to improve upon the active transportation through projects or programs, and whether that's a infrastructure or a soft project. So you can see we identified several hubs, as well as Salzburg, Blairsville, Burrell Township, and Cherry Tree as the county gateways. And we paired that with the what you can do section for municipal and partner priorities. So the what we can do section was more for the county, and the what you can do section is things that we can provide technical assistance on and be a partner in, but may need to be led locally. And so we have priorities for municipalities countywide. And then we identified, and we really did not, I will say this, and I don't really have an idea or a feeling as to whether or not I wish we may have done this part a little differently. But what we decided to do was, with these local items that were identified, we did change, if it was grammar or something like that. But we didn't refine these items or edit them very much from the way that they were provided in the public engagement process or through a key stakeholder interview, or if it was an action item that had been identified in one of the existing plans. We would have had to combine all of them and make them all have the same kind of feel in order to do that right. And we just thought that, as I mentioned before, we had $16,500 for the contract, and everything else for this plan was augmented by our planning section and the input from the steering committee and the guidance from the steering committee and planning commission. I just wanted to note that for you all. It's something that to think about in your own planning as to how you may address something like this. Because of course it's not perfect, but these are the decisions that we made as a project team. And we included items for Indiana, et cetera, the different gateway communities, as well as priorities for business owners, residents, and visitors, school districts, the university, the transit authority, and others. One of the key things that we also focused on this plan that for whatever reason was not a focus or really identified in the plan for more people biking and walking more often was the relationship to transit. Of course, Indigo and the Transit Authority do have their own strategic plan, but we wanted to address that aspect of active transportation through this planning process, as well as things like e-bikes and micro-mobility, things of that nature that were just not only were they not at the forefront of discussion, but some of them weren't in existence during the previous plan. So we have the funding and implementation strategy that of course is more typical that we wanted to include. A lot of this was provided through our consultant team and doing research and fact finding and gathering of this information into one place. Some of you are probably familiar with some of these items. The table from the U.S. Department of Transportation for funding opportunities. We wanted to provide resources, SPC Active Transportation Resource being one of those, and a link to our other plans and studies, PennDOT Active Transportation Plan and others. And then what we did then was, so again, that's the digestible components of the plan. It takes you through 54 pages, but it is a 100-page document. That's because we included the implementation matrix in the appendix, the walk works, because there were metrics related to the grant program that we included, DCNRs, bicycle and e-bike policy was something that Parks and Trails suggested that we include. And this was another key component because one of the plans, being the open spaces, greenways, and trails plan, has these corridors identified that, frankly, some work has been done on, but there's a lot of opportunity to continue to pursue these. And there was so much here that was relevant and useful information and specific project-specific items that we just included it in the appendix as well. So that is the planning document itself. I can pause for questions briefly, but I am going to jump back to the PowerPoint, and if you would like to hold your questions, that's fine as well. Okay. Yes. Go ahead.
Hi there. This is Kelly Pack with Rails to Trails Conservancy. Nice to see you and to see this great plan. I was just curious about what motivated the county to adopt and kind of implement this active transportation plan as part of its comprehensive plan. I love it. I'm gonna do later this week a presentation with the AMPO, the Association for Metropolitan Planning Organizations, specifically on active transportation in rural communities. And this is just such a great example of a county-led effort to incorporate active transportation. So would love to hear about what the motivation was.
Well, one of the key reasons is that we here in Indiana County know that we have to be the big brother, big sister, so to speak, to our local municipalities. Most of them definitely. They just don't have the capacity. We barely do. We work with our other partners like SPC, PennDOT, et cetera, to maximize, the productivity and the what we can get accomplished here in Indiana County. And we kind of expect and encourage the local municipalities to do the same thing. So in terms of why the county leads it, it's because nobody else is really doing it or has done it. And we recognize the importance of it. And we're fortunate enough, to have planning staff and to be part of SPC and to kind of know best practices and things like that and be able to act on them. but we do have to have support from our county commissioners. You know, whether I don't want to say we sell them on these types of things, but we allow them to make informed decisions about these types of things by providing them with information and keeping them updated appropriately with respect to topics like this and many others that are not even just transportation related, but we bring it to the forefront. So I think the recommendation of the Office of Planning and Development to adopt it as part of the comprehensive plan is the primary reason, to be frank. But we also have a precedent of doing such. So all of those other plans that I mentioned that we reviewed extensively as part of this effort, they were adopted in conjunction with, if you read the resolution for the adoption of our comprehensive plan, they were officially adopted as amendments to the plan as well. So we wanted to, so in order to make this plan as official as those are, we figured that we needed to do such. Otherwise, it may not get as much credence as it deserves. And so we wanted to do it right, I guess, is the main reason. Because sure, it could be adopted by a resolution and just referencing the plan itself. But we just figured going through the MPC process was the best way to do it. And we'd already gone this far.
That's great. It sounds like you have a great dedicated staff that are constantly working on doing the political will building for, you know, your local elected officials, your commissioners. That's great. Thank you.
And we
This is Laurie LaFontaine from Indiana County. I would also like to say, anyone who knows me knows I've been involved with developing rail trails in Indiana County since, you know, the early 90s. And really, it's an historical partnership that developed early days with grassroots advocate building relationships with the political as well as the county agencies and municipalities. So it's really a hand in glove. It never starts from the top down, always roots, grassroots. So you need those partnerships to develop simultaneously, and then you build public support through that.
And
but you definitely need dedicated staff that gets it and that is well educated and articulate. And then the various other county agencies, like we're fortunate enough to have a Parks and Trails, and the county commissioners throughout the decades have continued endorsing this, and through our planning commission as well. So it's a total picture here in any county or municipality for it to succeed.
And Kelly, I didn't mention, we have an Indiana County Active Transportation Advisory Committee that actually had been formulated prior to this planning effort. It actually was formulated in conjunction with, or at the same time as, the walk works and things like that were coming on here in Indiana County. So it did take time to develop, but that Active Transportation Advisory Committee connects us with that grassroots component.
Thank you both.
Any other questions? Or I'll move back on. Can you guys see my PowerPoint? Oh yeah, I can see it. Okay. So again, the link is available on our website there, as I showed. I did want to highlight a couple of, because the proof has to be in the pudding, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's not just all talk, you know, it's not just all planning and getting things on shelves. I think that the planning that we have done it has led to implementation, and our focus on this effort was to develop an implementable plan further to that end. So we hope that there are several or many implementable projects and recommendations that are included in the plan. And this speaks to some of the relevant projects that were completed recently. Indiana County Multimodal Corridor Project, renamed the Hootlebug Trail Extension upon completion. That was shown on the map where you connect to downtown Indiana. Several years ago, the official Hootlebug Trail terminates in White Township, we've been able to bring it up into Indiana. And the hope, not just at the county level, but with the partners of Indiana Borough, White Township, and even IUP, is to extend it out to the White Township Recreation Complex in an east to west fashion at some point in the future. The Hootlebug and the county would support that effort, even though not necessarily financially, but even though we won't own it, we're partner in this. The Hootlebug Trail, something that the county does own, we did through the Transportation Alternative Set Aside Program and SPC, Mile Hill section improvements in 2020, 2021. Blairsville Riverfront Trail resurfacing has been awarded through the Alternative Set Aside Program this past awards. So that is a current project. Indiana Borough Sidewalks Project, multimodal transportation fund for that. And the county had a hand in all of these, either through supporting or providing technical assistance related to the project. Salzburg Avenue improvements is a project that is related to the one below it, the Oakland Avenue widening. White Township and others saw the opportunity to connect to the Oakland Avenue improvements and ultimately connect back to Rose Street, which has bike lanes, and the Hootlebug Trail. So we're actually going to have a network when you compare it with the improvements that were supported by the Active Transportation Advisory Committee and then included in the Oakland Avenue widening and multimodal improvements project, which should be completed sometime, I believe, 2023 or 4. I think it might be 24 at this point. You'll be able to walk and or ride bike to Walmart from downtown Indiana. Really, really, really major paradigm shift there, or major change, I guess, a dynamic change there. The Route 22 pedestrian bicycle bridge project. Laurie, do you want to highlight that? I'll let you talk about that for a second, if you'd like.
Yeah, it's been a long project, but we finally have executed. We're waiting for the commissioner's signature on the MTF funding document in order for PennDOT to actually let bids. So once that takes place, then it will go to bid letting, and that's exciting. So that will provide even more connections to existing trails and also the community around that corridor of Route 22 that are businesses and schools and medical centers, connecting with the borough of Blairsville and their riverfront trail, looking to Westmoreland County to connect with the West Penn Trail. So this was a key project to get that bridge in, to connect several regional connections, as well as provide active transportation for citizens that live in those corridors.
Exactly. Thanks, Laurie. So it's a big project that we've been working on for years. There was actually local opposition in the municipality where the bridge itself is located, but we've been able to work through that with Burrell Township, and we're hopeful that it's not a cost prohibitive project at this point, and that we are able to get it implemented. And there's other projects associated with it that could come on the back end, such as the next two, the Pine Ridge Park, which is a county-owned park in Burrell Township, that we want to connect. The bridge project will end at a park and ride there, and we hope to connect across Old William Penn Highway and improve a connection up to Pine Ridge Park. However, we're able to, whether it's share the road or otherwise. And the Cornell Road improvements is another related project as well. And that's that project, the Route 22, is also in proximity to Blairsville Salzburg School District High School and campus. I mentioned before the Indiana County Walkworks and the decathlon program. It's huge for us. That's why programming and promotion became one of the pillars in this plan, is because we've seen how well it works and how it builds that culture and how that makes other things seemingly a little bit easier to implement. It doesn't seem like we're fighting such an uphill battle always, at least. Don't take my word for it. It's This isn't a silver bullet, guys, but we've been doing our best with respect to that here. And another key item is the Wayne Avenue multimodal corridor study and safety improvements that came out of that. That was actually funded by PennDOT. Michael Baker worked with us here locally on some of those partners that I'd mentioned. And there's $20 million in projects that have very preliminary or conceptual design and cost estimates related to that. And there's $5 million on the long range plan, stage 3, related to that. So, you know, my point being is, you know, you get the planning in place, you know, we do this. There are real life outcomes that benefit the community and benefit the quality of life locally and regionally, as we hope. This is the flyer for this year's. This is the 7th annual Indiana County Decathlon. Another shout out to Molly on this. This is 100% done by Molly, and obviously the input and feedback of we do have a decathlon planning team that I have to thank, you know, for their involvement in helping to plan this event every year. The county commissioners support our involvement in this event. They see its relationship to active transportation and recreation and other things that are part of our comprehensive planning efforts. So we partner with the Friends of the Parks group to promote a couple of different events that you can see with the asterisks, but all the other ones we develop in-house and with partners who lead the walks. We don't lead them. We just show up and provide materials about WalkWorks. We partner with the Y, Parks and Trails, and others. It's been a great event, weather permitting, but we do try to do it during the time of year that there's not a whole lot of other stuff already going on, and to try to encourage people to get out and get active and learn about their county and some of the cultural and recreational resources and opportunities that are out there. And it's an opportunity for folks to share about their interests and stuff, like Ray Winstead, who you can see pictured there, who's a retired professor from IUP. Our first event every year, we feed the birds out of our hands at Blue Spruce Park, and some others walk around the park. It used to be the Chili Walk pre-COVID. We met indoors since COVID and bringing it back together. We actually do the Hot Chocolate Walk now. We had good weather this year. We advertised it thoroughly as best as we could, and we had over 80 people show up to that event out at Blue Spruce Park, which was very, very successful in our eyes and encouraging for the future. So, and you know, at these types of events, we are able to highlight active transportation, talk about it, and there's future opportunities to do more of that, you know, in terms of education and awareness and that type of thing. We also, we had pivoted during COVID and done it all self-guided walks for 2020, or for 2021. I'm sorry, 2020 we got through a couple and then we kind of had to you know react very quickly. But for 2021 we did all self-guided walks. They are available in an archive on our website. But we decided to do 1 or 2 self-guided ones each year now as well. That is just, I wanted to mention that because they don't all have to be, or a program like this doesn't all have to be led walks and things like that. You know, it's whatever you're able to make work for you.
Josh, would I be able to briefly add really quick too? This is the first year that we've specifically designated some walks as wheelchair accessible.
Yes.
You know, and I that was something that we had already included a scale in past years showing the difficulty of the walk, so people could, you know, decide what walks would be most appropriate for their ability level. But you know, and we'd already had walks like the walk and roll on the Climber Trail, which were wheelchair accessible, but now we're trying to specifically market those to encourage everyone to show up, you know, and to walks that they're able to participate in. Just wanted to point that out. Sorry.
Thank Molly, and that's Molly. Everybody, shout out to her. So yes, I mean, thank you guys. The long short of this is, or the key takeaway is that if even at a place like Indiana County with not so many staff, we were able to acquire the grant funding. We were able to produce the plan in-house, and we're able to implement items. It does take an effort, but we found that it's worthwhile and that it does pay dividends. And as I mentioned, the proof is in the pudding. And we wanted to share what we're doing here locally so that we could get feedback on it, but moreover, so that others could maybe gain something from this. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much for that presentation, Josh. I'm impressed with the comprehensive, detailed nature of the plan with that thin budget. As always, Indiana County staff and grassroots advocates really do some great stuff there in the county. If we have no questions for Josh at this time, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. Trail being presented by Chris Blackwell, Penn Township, and Brian Kroll with Trans Systems.
All right. Hey, good afternoon. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes. Yes. Looks good, Brian.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm going to tag team this presentation with Chris Blackwell. We're going to be presenting today on the VOP Trail. And those of you who don't know what VOP means, that's Verona, Oakmont, Penn Hills, and Plum. So this is a trail that's going to run through these 4 communities. And I'm going to turn over to Chris here in a moment, but my name's Brian Kroll. I'm a project manager at Trans Systems, and at Trans Systems, we do a lot of multimodal trail design work. We work a lot with local municipalities. We work with Friends of the Riverfront, Allegheny County, and we're happy to be part of this project with those municipalities, Verona, Oakmont, Penn Hills, Plum. Chris is with Penn Hills, and he's administering this contract. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris right now.
Hope everybody can hear me okay, I think. Yeah, thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone, for including us on your agenda for today. I've been the planning director. I'm the planning director here. I've been working for Penn Hills for about 30 years, and I've worked on a lot of projects, and this one's pretty great. I've had some good ones, but this is probably a real highlight of my career. And I think the first thing I want to say is with a project like this is the key word is persistence. And the VOP Trail will be it's a multimodal, multi-municipal trail that travels through 4 communities. It's about 14 miles long. It goes from Steel City Rowing in Verona on the Allegheny River to Boyce Park in Plum, and it'll follow basically the green corridor of Plum Creek, passing half a dozen parks, businesses, a lot of opportunities there. And it's going to be on road. It's going to be off road on shared trails. It's going to be on, crossing through private property. We have it all. This trail really, we're experiencing a lot of different, I'll say, challenges and opportunities with this trail. And the VOP steering committee is comprised of, when you have 4 communities involved, the VOP Trail Committee, I think we have, Brian, I think we have maybe 32, 33 people on our steering committee. And and it includes, representatives from each community, public officials, elected officials. We have Jay Costa's office, our state representative, Joe McAndrew, Friends of the Riverfront. Actually, I think half the people on our committee are actually on this meeting with Courtney and Katie from Friends of the Riverfront. And then a lot of assistance from Allegheny County with Anna Gork, who's also on here. But so we have a large steering committee. But I think as Lori LaFontaine said earlier, it takes grassroots. And I'm going to go back just a little bit. I don't want to keep you too long, but the story about this, the story of this trail is really persistence. And this effort began maybe 20 years ago, but maybe even earlier. and there was a small core group of about 6 of us, half a dozen of us, and actually the same group is still on the committee today. We're still like the main focus of focal point of our steering committee. But so like 20 years ago, we were trying to get a trail to go from this exact same spot, Steel City Rowing in Verona, the Rivertown Shops area, to the zoo on Allegheny River Boulevard. And we had a feasibility study. We prepared a feasibility study. We took it to the county, and honestly, there really wasn't interest in the south side of Allegheny River. There wasn't really interest in creating a trail at that time, and a lot of the focus was across the river in Blawnox, Fox Chapel, and O'Hara Township. So and truly, we were told they kind of said that, there's really no interest in this at this time. So we put our heads down and we went home. And then, but it's always been on our mind. We've been working on the Allegheny River Boulevard in various capacities over time. And then if you fast forward 10 years, Rich Fitzgerald's office, Darla Cravata from Allegheny County, I got an email saying 2015, and it included the same people that are on that committee. It says, hey, we need to talk, kind of thing, from Darla Cravata. So, and here it's there, they said that they had an interest in creating a trail connecting all their county parks to all the county parks and to the Allegheny River. And they were interested, would we be willing to do this project? We'd be interested in this project. And we jumped on, we were like, yes, we were, So the first thing we did was we applied for an Active Allegheny grant for the feasibility study. And the feasibility study is key. It's the foundation of the whole, for getting future grants, where we're headed, public input. It's the foundation of a project like this. So we, environmental planning design, completed the feasibility study in 2020. And in 2021, we used that study to go after another Active Allegheny grant, and Brian and his team at Trans Systems were awarded the contract to do the design and engineering preliminary design for the segment 1. There's 4 segments in this trail. So it would be the segment 1 in Verona. And that's near completion. We're going to complete that, I think, Brian, in next. But then in 2022, Allegheny County and the Allegheny County Redevelopment Authority created the Trail Development Fund. And it provides grants to communities, organizations for trail and active transportation projects. And it was, we had our feasibility in hand. It was perfect. And Allegheny County awarded $22 million to 18 communities or 18 projects. And this is funded with American Rescue Plan, the American Rescue Plan Act, and those funds. And we're extremely excited to get it. Penn Hills received, the VOP Trail Committee, we received $1.2 million to do this, to complete this study. And the thing about this is that, the earlier presenters and people on this committee know how long it takes to get these things done. Well, this funding, it runs out in December 31st of 2024. So we are moving to get this project done, to spend the money and get this whole project done. So I think we applied for the grant. We were awarded in October. We sent out RFPs and signed with Brian in December. And January we hit the road, and we're going to be doing field study. Like I hope the weather holds up the way it's been, because we're going to be doing field research next week. Starting next week. And but then I'm going to hand it over to Brian to continue with like the nuts and bolts of how we're going to proceed from this point.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And this is what Chris had described before. This is the 14-mile trail starting at Steel City Rowing in Verona, going through Oakmont, Penn Hills, Plum, terminating at Boyce Park. I'll go through each of those sections. And yeah, like Chris said, phase 1 has begun. Phase 1 is in Verona, Steel City Rowing to Creekside Park. We're currently in preliminary engineering, and like Chris mentioned, we're going to be wrapping this, at least the preliminary engineering phase, up here within the next month or so, and then we can get into final design. So this phase 1 is probably a little more advanced than the other phases. So what I'll talk about is kind of our scope of work. I'll kind of detail each of these phases, and then I'm going to get into just a little bit of phase one and some of the work we did since we've already started preliminary engineering. Again, just a couple maps here. If everyone's familiar, this is Verona and Allegheny River to your left here. This is Still City Rowing. So phase one is sort of split up into two phases. Center Avenue here, and phase 1A. We pick up at phase 1B down here at the bottom left, and we go through Allegheny River Boulevard that I'll talk about here momentarily. Cut through Plum Street to Creekside Park. So that both of those phases encompass all of phase one. Phase two picks up at Creekside Park. This is where we continue, or we enter the Penn Hills phase. And as you can see, the trail follows Plum Creek as close as possible here. Go into Milltown Park, and then all the way to the PA Turnpike. Phase three is the Turnpike to Plum Creek Park as we enter Plum Borough. And then phase four takes us from Plum Creek Park all the way to Boyce Park, which that'll be our 14-mile trail. And this phase is all in Plum Borough. So broken up by phases, and more than likely the project will be bid out in separate phases just due to construction funding. So looking to more than likely bid out phase 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm not sure of the order. I'll let Chris chime in on here, but I thought it was important because a lot of these trails, I mean, they're great for the community and they provide great destinations to a lot of green spaces and a lot of parks. And you can see those listed here, all the various parks that this 14-mile trail will provide connection to. Chris, I don't know if you wanted to chime in on anything.
I was just going to say, I think that folks that are, when you've worked on these trails, you think of the recreation and the transportation opportunities. And then there's also, you can see we have the business districts from Verona and Oakmont that we're connecting to. And the various communities, small communities and businesses along the way, parks along the way. So we're really hoping that, we know this trail is it's gonna have a big impact on these four communities. I'm sure many of you, like myself, you go to different parts of the state, even other states, and you're on these trails, and it's really nice to stop and get an ice cream, or I think that some of these trails also, everybody thinks they're out in the woods or something, and some of this is going to be quite industrial. There's going to be some more sort of industrial type views and things, and I think that makes the trail very interesting.
Yeah, and again, as you mentioned, and I'll talk about shortly, Allegheny River Boulevard, that's the major business district starting in Verona to Oakmont. So on top of those destinations, a lot of destinations, green spaces, park that we talked about, there'll be a lot of intersecting roadways and some roadways that we may need to try to utilize protected bike lanes on to some extent. And these are just a listing of some of the roadways in each of the municipalities and townships. You'll see some of the SRs. Those are the state routes, state route designations. That means that PennDOT owns those particular roadways. So major coordination is going to be required with PennDOT, District 11. And we've already begun a lot of that coordination with PennDOT, especially there for Allegheny River Boulevard, SR 2073, because PennDOT owns the roadways and because we're within PennDOT right of way, more than likely intersecting or running adjacent to any of these roadways will require a highway occupancy permit from PennDOT District 11, as well as traffic studies and just approval for various traffic control devices on these PennDOT roadways. Here we see a picture of a Halton Road in Penn Hills. Again, just one of many roadways that we'll be crossing, intersecting. Okay, so I'm going to go through quickly here just some of the scope tasks for the entire 14-mile VOP trail. You know, I think Chris already covered this first one. We're going to be reviewing the available information. You know, Chris talked about the VOP committee and just some of those studies. You know, the local knowledge. We're really counting on some of the folks from Verona, Oakmont, Penn Hills, Plum. They have a lot of this local knowledge. They have some visions and they've done some preliminary research and had discussions. So it's very important we continue to communicate with the VOP committee to get some of that local knowledge. And Chris mentioned field view, and yeah, we hit the ground running on this project. Yeah, all 14 miles we're going to be field viewing. You know, based on that feasibility study, we need to review the alignments and really go out in the field to review these alignments. Walk the topography, the terrain, Plum Creek, you know, the roadways, because there's a better option for various paths. We're going to be using what's called it's going to be a 360-degree camera. We're going to be starting this up real soon. We want to get out ahead of before all the leaves and the foliage comes through, because a lot of this alignment is going to be wooded area. So we're going to be using a 360-degree camera to walk the entire 14 miles. And basically what this is going to do, it's going to establish sort of a nice street view, so to speak, for something we're going to be utilizing for surveying, and that's small unmanned aircraft systems. So our survey and topography is going to be by way of drones. This 360-degree camera, again, it's going to set the course for our drone work to fly this whole 14-mile corridor. And again, you could use conventional surveying, but that would take a very long time. You're going to have to get into the deep woods. So we came up with using drone coverage for this. And I think it fits well based on just the topography, the lay of the land. So this is one of our first tasks we're going to be doing. And there you see a picture of a similar drone that we'll be using for this project. Hopefully we can come back next year or at some point and kind of give you the whole topography and what the drone flew and have some pictures. But it should be pretty cool. We're looking forward to that part of the project. Yeah, so continuing, we'll have to have some supplemental ground survey. We're doing deed property research. One of the things we sent out to hit the ground running was what they call notice of intent to enter letters. And those are just a sort of a requirement by the eminent domain code. Should we need any property in the future? More or less, these are for just doing the field view and walking through some properties that we're going to have to traverse for this, for the field view for the trail. Now, I've gotten a lot of calls since we've sent these letters. A lot of real encouraging calls. Some folks don't necessarily want this in their backyard. So those are just some of the things we're going to have to deal with as we move forward with the project. But overall, it's been pretty encouraging. I think I've only got a couple of calls that lawyers will be in touch with me shortly. So
you only got hung up on one, right? You got hung up on one time.
I got hung up on once as well, even though I called someone back. So anyhow, but that's an important step of the whole process. Permitting, we know permitting is going to be big. We're paralleling Plum Creek. We're going to have a pre-application meeting. We're going to deal with the DEP, Conservation District. Permitting is also going to consist of, as I mentioned, PennDOT highway occupancy permits. I mentioned traffic studies, traffic analysis, the PennDOT coordination, looking at just analysis on those roadways and our signals required too at certain intersections, and how are we going to cross certain intersections? I think that was mentioned by Trish Meek earlier, and that'd be something interesting to listen in on, or just some of those crossings for ped and bike paths. I won't get into all the nitty gritties here, but you see just some of our tasks, other design services there, design plan submissions, bicycle design. It's our intent to create 10-foot bi-directional bicycle protected lanes. That would be desirable with 2-foot buffered areas. I show some delineators with the buffered areas. We know that can't happen everywhere. We may need to look at widened shoulders, side paths. There may be some areas where we have to go with shared lane markings. We'll look at multimodal trails pathways as is shown in the right, because there are some wooded areas. And then we're also going to look at some trail amenities. What trail amenities can we add, whether that's bike racks, trash receptacles, and parking locations. Stakeholder involvement, I think Chris covered that pretty well. Our public process, we are going to have 4 public meetings. So we're going to give an opportunity for the public to comment. We're going to go to each community as well. And we've had one meeting here, as you see this flyer. We had it on January 19th. And what do you think, Chris? I thought it went pretty well. We had a good turnout and some real good feedback as well.
Yeah, it went really well. There's been a lot of good feedback on the trail.
So here's just a couple of renderings again, and that was sort of a scope for the overall trail. My last few slides here are going to focus on phase 1, because this is some work where we've already done. It's just some renderings of what this trail could look like. This is in Verona, the upper left picture, East Railroad Avenue. This would be a kind of a pathway, a trail through connecting to Creekside Park, one of the destinations. Here's Allegheny River Boulevard on the bottom left, and then Plum Street also here on the bottom right. So just some renderings of what this trail would in fact look like. Since we've started phase 1, this is sort of just a pathway of how we're going to get from Verona, up through the various phases. This is Still City Rowing, where we had our public meeting. This is going to take us to Allegheny River Boulevard. Now, just one note, I think we are going to come up Railroad Avenue after talking with Verona. And these are some of the reasons why, we're coordinating closely with the steering committee. We're looking for better routes. Some of this will be on road. Then I think once we get past, I think it's Grand Avenue, we're going to start our protected bike lane to come down East Railroad, up Center Avenue. And then something that we've taken a lot of time here with phase 1 in our preliminary engineering phase would be Allegheny River Boulevard. So we did do a traffic study. Allegheny River Boulevard, I think it's a little short of 10,000 vehicles per day. And the whole goal here is to do a road diet on Allegheny River Boulevard. If you've traveled this section from Center Avenue in Verona to Plum Street here on the left, that's approaching Oakmont. If you've traveled that roadway, you'll notice it's very wide, right? There's multiple lanes. You got vehicles passing, and it's a lower speed too. So there's a lot of vehicles that are exceeding the speed limit there. Looking at it, we coordinated with PennDOT and the VOP committee. We performed the traffic analysis of this section, and we got approval to do a road diet on Allegheny River Boulevard. So that would be just taking 4 lanes down to 3 lanes with a 2-way separated bike lane. Okay. So really the question is, when we come up Center Avenue, do we cross Allegheny River Boulevard and keep this bicycle lane on the northbound side, or do we keep it on the southbound side? Okay, what you're looking at here are a couple different typical sections that we put together. There are a couple of bus stops too. We've coordinated with Pittsburgh Regional Transit. They've been very helpful to give us some various options on how we can relocate or accommodate this bus stop within this separated bike lane. We're still going through it. My recommendation, it looks to appear that we may use the southbound option here on Allegheny River Boulevard. There is a get-go here, so there's a lot of traffic coming in and out, but there are a lot less conflict points on the southbound side. If you look on the northbound side, there's a lot of side roads. There's a lot of driveways. Daily Way is a major manufacturing, the American Beverage, I believe, is the company here. So you get a lot of heavy vehicles coming in and out, turns. So right now it looks like we're going to be recommending the southbound option on Allegheny River Boulevard. And then right here, it's interesting, part of our traffic analysis, part of our traffic study, this intersection here at Plum Street and Allegheny River Boulevard warranted a traffic control signal. And it actually warranted a signal in existing conditions. There's a new apartment complex right up here in Oakmont, and somehow that development got away without installing a signal here, but existing conditions show us we're going to need a signal here. So we're working with Oakmont, and they're on board. They realized to make this happen at Allegheny River Boulevard is we're gonna need to design and construct a traffic signal. There is some parking on the northbound side as well, which presents another issue we'll have to deal with. So that's why we're looking at potentially coming here on the southbound bike lane. You see, we have a couple typical sections here. And if anyone's interested, you can reach out to myself or Chris. We can provide you some more details of, what we've done so far. And
these studies are available online. They're on our Penn Hills website. The comprehensive plan, the feasibility study, these documents are all available. Even the old 2003, feasibility study to get from Steel City Rolling to the zoo is on there. I think it's interesting that both of these trails start at the same spot. Like, one was going to go to the zoo, this one's going to Boyce Park, but they both start at Steel City Rowing in Verona.
Yeah, and then so, if we take the southbound bike lane, we have a signal here at Plum. We're still looking into what's the next step, because Plum Street provides its own issues with tighter right-of-ways adjacent to Plum Creek. So there'll be some issues there. And I believe, yes, here's Plum Street here. Here's the signal we were at in Allegheny River Boulevard and Plum Street. So now we take a right on Plum Street. And as you see, here's Plum Creek running adjacent. The whole goal here is to get us to Creekside Park and the new ball fields. So this is what we're looking at.
It's really interesting, the technology that that you're using, Brian. That we're like, Brian sends me Google Maps. You may often be familiar with that. I wasn't, and showing that we can actually adjust alignments, of the on the fly, so to speak. And then the fact that we're using drones is pretty incredible. Pretty amazing technology that's being put into the formation of this trail, that I think even when we come to the first public meeting, say, and we're showing drone footage of how the trail is going to go, it's going to be pretty incredible. And then as Brian said, we have monthly committee meetings. So we're meeting monthly, we're keeping in touch, and really just, we need that to roll along. And if you look at the schedule, it's pretty aggressive, pretty amazing.
Yeah, survey mapping this spring. And yeah, as Chris said, we had a crew that we went through and before our field view, which we're still sort of looking at the weather, we went through and just spent days looking at Google Maps, putting lines on there, and we sent that to the team and Chris, and that's what he's talking about with Google Earth, where you can manipulate some of the different alignments, look at some offshoot alignments as well. So this is our schedule. We know there's going to be some challenges with this schedule. Permitting's one of them. Right-of-way acquisition, that's going to be another one. But as Chris mentioned, the end of 2024, that's when we need to have everything completed. So that's sort of why we've been pretty aggressive with the schedule thus far to get things moving. And then obviously our 4 public meetings will be throughout the duration of the project.
And I would
note, I guess, Chris, I guess we could open up for questions.
Yeah, I just want to say too, I think that, we're very really at the beginning stages, but I think that I don't see why we're not, there's nothing where we're going, holy smokes, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to work. We're moving along quite quickly. And then before I take questions, I just wanted to say, there's a big push for multi-municipal projects, and there's always this desire for these multi-municipal projects. And I think it's a great idea. I think it's good. It's working well in this case. But when you have a multi-municipal project, someone has to be in charge. Like and in this case, it's Penn Hills. Like someone has to take the lead. Some community, some person has to take the lead, and the others, you kind of have to, that's the only way it's going to work. And then, but there are issues that are going to come up when you talk about, say, like in this case, it's the design, the $1.2 million to design and engineer the whole trail. But what comes down to, say, construction, and say we're using a DCNR grant that's a 50-50 match, that's where I think Brian mentioned where maybe each community is going to have to go on their own. It may be a multi-municipal effort, but I can't get my council to pass funding for a section in Verona, say, something like that. And then another thing I want to say too is that I've been working here 30 years, and if I had known, I wish what we're looking at now when we're going over these right-of-ways, a lot of these right-of-ways are privately owned, and they weren't purchased in 1850. They were purchased in 2005. So if I was here in the 90s. So if I had known, so I would just say, even go back to your communities or your counties, or if there's property that's available, abandoned right-of-way, things like that, try to obtain it. Like start working on that kind of stuff today, because I think it would have made this project a whole lot easier. And then just my other thing about the feasibility study being key, like having a feasibility study. If I need to apply for another grant, it's so easy. The language is in it, the mapping is done, the cost estimates are there. It's like I've done a lot of studies, and we all say they sit on a shelf. I got a whole cabinet here next to my desk. But it really, this project really proves that the need for a feasibility study, that kind of study or transportation plan, things like that in advance.
Yeah, Chris, if I could add to your right-of-way comment, we are trying to stay within, when it comes to Allegheny River Boulevard, inside that right-of-way footprint. PennDOT owns Allegheny River Boulevard. So any roads, we're trying to stay within that right-of-way. The old, Allegheny Valley Railroad. We're trying to stay within that right of way. So we're trying to minimize right of way as much as we can, because we know that that's going to be a process. So that's one of our goals too of this project.
What's interesting too is we've gotten a lot of good feedback from the notice to enter letters, and most of that is from actual property owners. And what it seems the residents that are least excited about the project are actually not property owners or squatters, or like if you own a piece of property and your swimming pool happens to be in a right of way that you've been swimming in for 20 years, you're not happy that a trail's coming through. So those are some of the the challenges that we're going to be facing.
Yeah, on that, Chris, there's a big tract of land. What is it? Dozens of acres, and the developer is excited about this going through the perimeter of his property. He knows that's going to raise value. So we've gotten a lot of good feedback like that they're willing to give us some land because they know that this trail is going to add value to their property. I guess Leanne will turn over any questions that anybody may have.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Brian and Chris, for presenting on that. I'm not sure how familiar everybody was with the VOP trail, and hopefully we have a lot more informed people right now. So if anyone has any questions right now, we'll open it up for that. And if not, then we'll move on to the next topic on the agenda. All right, not hearing any questions at this point. We'll move on to the next presentation.
Thank you very much.
The next two, oh, you're welcome, and thank you both. Next two presentations are being presented by staff from the Rails to Trails Conservancy. And first, we'll hear from Kevin Bell on the Great American Rail Trail.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound good.
Awesome, thank you very much. I am Kevin Bell. I am the project manager for the Great American Rail Trail here at Rails to Trails Conservancy. I'm in our Washington, D.C. office, and you also see on the screen Kelly Pack. Hi, Kelly. Who's our Senior Director of Trail Development, I believe, out of Pittsburgh. So I'm going to talk about one project we work on. Kelly's going to broaden it a little bit more about some other stuff. But I appreciate you all inviting me to come to speak. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick. So this is a brief presentation. I'll probably only take 5-10 minutes, hear some questions, and then move over to Kelly. But the Great American Rail Trail is a project that we launched in 2019, but we've actually been working on it for a long time. And Rails to Trails Conservancy is the nation's largest trail advocacy organization. We were founded in 1986, and our mission is to help connect people and places through trails. And that mission comes together in a project like the Great American Rail Trail, which is really looking to connect a cross-country multi-use trail. We know we've got quite a few north-south trails in the United States, but we don't quite have the fully connected cross-country trail yet, east to west. So our goal is to work on a fully off-road trail that creates one route across the country between Washington, D.C. and Washington State, which I'll share on a map in a moment. Over the years of trying to plan this project, we made sure that it crosses 12 states and the District of Columbia. And this route, we kind of have to consider them as 12 cross-state trails so that each state really has ownership of their trail and decides where it goes. So before we launched, we had meetings with officials from each of the 12 states to help us select the preferred route, as we're calling it. And just another thing we want to highlight is that this route is really intended for economic development, especially in rural areas where perhaps railroads used to come through, but might no longer do so. And knowing that trail tourism is a growing and important sector of the economy, especially outdoor recreation as a whole, but trail tourism itself also is a part of that. So this is what the route looks like today, and I'll share in more detail kind of some of the gaps we have, especially the one gap we have in your region. Yeah, crosses 12 states, and we're currently about 54% complete, which means that just about 2,050 miles are completed on the ground all the way between Washington, D.C. and Washington State, which is over 150 individual host trails, of which in Southwest Pennsylvania, we certainly have the Great Allegheny Passage and the Three Rivers Heritage Trail, as well as the Montour and the Panhandle Trail heading out of Pennsylvania into West Virginia. Just a bit about how we got to where we are today. As you know, we started in 1986. And this idea has kind of been in the back of our heads for a long time, but we didn't want to get out ahead of the idea until it was over halfway done on its own, so that we knew that there was enough work that had already been done to launch this initiative. So in 2016, we did some analysis, discovered that multiple routes were really over halfway done. Did some GIS analysis, a route assessment, and through the process of talking to all of the states and all of our partners, launched it on May 8th, 2019. And currently there's so much going on, I can't distill it into one bullet point, but we're doing ongoing trail development and promotion with our partners, getting people out on the trail. Just had a really great article in National Geographic, if you saw that, where we talked about the economic development opportunities in a few small towns like Muncie, Indiana, where you wouldn't think of that as an outdoor recreation mecca perhaps, but hopefully this trail is a thing that is boosting it into the forefront in a place like that. Here is a kind of light colored version. So you can go on our website, greatamericanrailtrail.org, and you can explore this in more detail. But this map shows the routes. The green lines are the existing trails today. The red lines are what we call planned trails, lines that we know are in some stage of development that is appropriate to put on a public facing map. Because we know once the line goes on, certainly the conversation changes from there. And then these boxes, which we call unplanned segments, where there might be some work being done in the background, but it's not quite ready for public conversation. So zooming into Southwest Pennsylvania, we've got the vast majority of the route is complete. There's really only one gap. Most of you are well aware of this gap in the network, which goes between Pittsburgh and Coriopolis, roughly about 10 miles or so. And really, I mean, there's bike lanes on that whole island right now, so we know people are doing it. I actually did it myself last summer. I biked between Cincinnati and Pittsburgh and got to explore what it looks like, the ground down there. Take some questions in a moment, but I'll just share. Yeah, this is pictures I took from Station Square, obviously, as you're heading in and out of Pittsburgh. Not quite super friendly. You're very well aware of what Carson Street looks like there. But then, of course, you turn around, you pass Station Square, and you have that beautiful view of downtown Pittsburgh, and it's so inviting and welcoming. So I know that filling that gap has been a conversation locally for a very long time. There's been feasibility studies. There's been conversation. So we want to help however we can at Rails to Trails to fill that gap. Though we know it's not easy. If it was easy, it would have been done by now already. That is that. I'll take some questions here. Just here's our website and my contact information. If you have further questions, I've certainly gotten to chat with several of you over the years, which I've appreciated. I'll take questions on the project if you have any.
All right, I'm not hearing any questions. Give it a minute there though. But I would like to say I'm always excited when I see that map of the Great American Rail Trail coming right through the SPC region. I'm like, all right, a lot we can do there. All right. Not hearing any questions. We'll go ahead and move on to Kelly. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see it okay. Sorry, getting used to the WebEx interface here. Yeah, so I will also try to be as brief as possible. I know we're kind of wrapping up on the second hour of the meeting. It's been really incredible to hear about all the work going on in Southwest PA. And I think the two project examples today provided by Indiana County and both Chris and Brian on the VOP trail really illustrate the evolution of the trails movement in this country, and they both demonstrate how single trails and those grassroots efforts that Lori talked about played such a huge role in creating the individual trails that we all know and love and have used for many decades. And now we're at a moment in time where a lot of us at either the municipal level, the county level, the regional or multi-state level are looking at how to better connect all of these individual trails so that through the connectivity, we can realize the full benefits of trail networks to our individual communities and regions. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our Trail Nation initiative and how you can join us. Let me see if I can get my slides to advance here. So here at RTC, about 10 years ago, we began to kind of experience and see this trend in the trails movement and a lot of our work on staff moving from supporting individual trail development to looking at how to connect those trails into systems and networks. And we started working really closely in 8 different locations across the country. And those are what we call our Trail Nation projects, of which the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition is one. And I know many of you through IHTC and all the great work that happens there collectively with members of the coalition, and RTC co-leads the project support team with the Pennsylvania Environmental Council and the Park Services Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program. So we're really fortunate to be able to have worked alongside many of you for lots of years in the region to understand how, especially in this area, in this multi-state area of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Ohio, a connected trail network could really support economic and community development priorities in the region. So we, like I said, at many different scales, we've been working in individual communities and regions for about the past 10 years. And we're really excited to use the learnings from those projects to launch the Trail Nation Collaborative and the Trail Nation Playbook, which I'll talk about a little bit here in a second. Just to kind of give you an understanding of the big picture goals here with this initiative, you know, we kind of see this evolution of developing these world-class trail networks, learning from how different communities at different scales are doing that successfully, what their challenges are, and then proliferating trail and active transportation networks across the country. So we really want to see, you know, the vision is that trail networks are at the forefront of how communities prioritize resources for growing their economic competitiveness, which is huge in this region, also improving health outcomes, quality of life, all very important. So we have this kind of suite of initiatives and products that kind of comprise our Trail Nation initiative, including the projects and the playbook, which is taking learnings from a lot of those different sites that we just saw and putting them into one comprehensive playbook and kind of guide for how to do trail network development and sustained maintenance and support from your community over the years. So these are the different elements that we saw emerge from the places where we were working, and each of these elements has its own page with lots of examples and resources. It's on our website. I'll put the link in the chat here in a moment, but lots of examples from the IHTC region within this playbook as well. And, you know, like I said, we're really excited to learn about more emerging trail networks every day across the country. Right now, we know of about 100 different networks across the country. And of course, the Trail Nation sites that we work with closely, and then all the communities that are a part of the Great American Rail Trail are really the laboratories of learning for us. And part of what we wanted to do in launching the collaborative was to take the networks, you know, that have been created as part of those coalitions and connect them with each other. So the collaborative's main function is to connect peers to peers, right? And to kind of broaden our thinking about who the stakeholders are within Trail Nation, or sorry, within trail network projects at any scale. So I think this is just a perfect example of the type of group and, you know, the different organizations and different agencies that each of you represent are exactly the types of people that we're looking to connect through the collaborative. So we hope to do that by, you know, offering different forums for you to connect with each other and with RTC to share those lessons, to better understand how different sized communities are taking advantage of increased federal funding. That's a big part of what we're focusing on in the coming years. As I know many of you all know, there are lots of new opportunities through the bipartisan infrastructure law with new programs, expanded eligibilities of existing programs. This is really a once in a generation moment for trails and active transportation networks to capture public dollars, especially federal funding programs. So we want to use the collaborative as a place for the partners to demonstrate, talk about challenges, right, in trying to access and obligate some of these funds, and to better understand how trails and active transportation can be really competitive in applying to some of these new programs where trails and active transportation are now part of the eligibility for it. So I encourage you to take a look at the funding sources available on our website. It's really comprehensive. We're so excited to see every day as we hear of announcements from some of the larger discretionary federal programs like RAISE, that a bigger and bigger portion of those programs are going to trails and active transportations, and that's really demonstrates the powerful nature of the trail network movement, I think. So you can engage with us by signing up. Again, I'll put a link in the chat here in a moment. We're offering online dialogues where it's not just a Zoom webinar style meeting, it's a Zoom meeting style. So we're actually in conversation with folks, even when we have 100 people or more, and trying to do things to foster that connection between peers. We'll have a webinar series coming up as well, in-person events. We're going to be at a lot of different conferences, and online technical assistance coming soon. This is just a kind of quick glance at what we've got coming up in the future. This is the best way, easiest way to connect. You can sign up to be a member of the collaborative and get all of our e-newsletters and announcements of any of the free online events that we're doing. I know we're really close to time, so I'm just going to kind of power through. We had one other thing we wanted to talk about today, and I'm not the lead staff person on this initiative, so I'm just kind of going to walk you through it quickly. We have a webinar on our website about Celebrate Trails Day. If you'd like to learn more and sign up to host an activity on that day, please do. So this year, Celebrate Trails Day is on April 22nd, 2023. We all know that demand for trails is higher than ever, and you know the pandemic definitely accelerated that, and we've been really interested to see that trail use continues to increase and remain really strong even in the past year. And the main goal of Celebrate Trails Day is to get people out on trails, really, right? It's a day to celebrate trails and engage people to get out there and use trails. The impact of the Celebrate Trails Day last year had a lot of folks out. You can kind of see some of the different metrics here. There were events in all 50 states and DC, lots of people being active on trails. And I think the one thing that I made a note about as Josh was talking, you know, he mentioned how important promotion and programming is in kind of, you know, I think also continuing to build that grassroots support. And this is just, you know, one tool in your toolbox to host an event and promote your local trail system. These are some resources that are available through our website. Again, we hope you sign up and participate by hosting an event on your local trail. And these are just some quick examples from last year. You see there on the far left, Women at Work Cycling, a part of the Black Women Bikes group, and along with other Pittsburgh partners, hosted an event here in Pittsburgh last year. We have everything from people hosting rides, and you can see pony rides on a trail, cleanup events. I know in Morgantown, West Virginia, I work with a lot of folks in that area. They are hosting a handmade market on the trail. So it's a way for local artists to sell their works, and you know, usually it's on hopefully a nice day later in April. It's a good time for the community to come out together and use the trail in all different types of ways. So I will stop sharing my screen. Sorry, I tried to power through. I'm gonna, yes, Celebrate Trails is same day as Earth Day. Yeah, thanks, Jason. I'm gonna open it up for any quick questions and put a couple links in the chat here.
All right, thanks so much for sharing on that, Kelly. It's always great to hear what the Rails to Trails Conservancy is doing and how they've evolved over the years. They're always my go-to resource for best practices and building trails.
Thanks, Leanne.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you and Kevin both for presenting. All right, not hearing any questions at this point. I'd like to close with just an announcement that SPC's staff bike club, the Yellow Goats, we're still going out in that. And I say that because that's what our acronym stands for. GOAT, G-O-A-T, Going Out Nat, in Pittsburgh East. And we started that bike club in 2021, and we'll be doing that again this year. I do not have the 2023 ride schedule developed yet, but the first ride will be on Celebrate Charles Day. And I'm going to share a photo just from our first year. That's our first ride in 2021 on Celebrate Charles Day. So we always kick off our year of riding on Celebrate Charles Day. And I don't know if I have us listed as a host yet, or like with RTC, but I'll make sure we get that done and be promoting it on our social media. So, and I'll be getting flyers out. But so our first ride this year will be again on the Three Rivers Heritage Trail System, where that photo was. That one we rode from Millville to the old Western Penitentiary site and back. This year we're going to get started at that former penitentiary site, the North Shore Trail off of West Hall Street, and we're going to bike to the new location of the SPC office, which will be in the Strip District. So we'll bike there, get lunch in the Strip, and then bike back to the starting point. And another change for this year, well, that wasn't really a change, that's just a highlight of our first ride, which will be April 22nd. In the past, we tried to keep all the rides to roughly 10 miles round trip, but this year we're going to extend the rides, and so we'll be doing longer rides and hopefully more eating at local restaurants. We say bring your own packed lunch. A lot of that started with COVID concerns, but at any rate, we have that planned. I'll be getting on a flyer when that ride's developed. And if no one has anything else for the good of the order, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. And again, thanks to all our presenters and all our attendees. Have a great day.